Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. It is day 212 of TowerGate, October the 5th, 2017, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to start the video today by just saying thank you to all those in the comments section, to my subscribers, all of you who commented regarding my father. Just so you all know, I do appreciate that very much. And just so you know, me, my sisters, my mother, we're all doing fine. We have moved on. It has been a little over 4 years. We think about my father every day. I know my mother does. I do. My sisters. And I can say that my father was the finest man that I ever knew. And I think my mother and sisters would tell you the same, as well as any of his friends. He was absolutely a wonderful man. We do miss him very much. But he would want us to go on with our lives. We'll never understand what happened. But we do know that he would want us to go on with our lives. And that's what we're doing. But I do thank you for your comments. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much. Let's get on with the news of the day, shall we? Okay, well, let's pick up where we left off on, obviously, the story that's still breaking, as crazy as that sounds. This story is going to be a breaking story for days and days now, because there's so much information that's coming out, so much information people are seeking. So we're going to be talking a lot about this Las Vegas shooting for, I'm sure, at least ways a couple of weeks. It's going to be probably the top topic that we're discussing. So let's go over what we've learned in the last 24 hours and see what we can make of all this. Okay, so looking at the interview, first of all, I really like this sheriff in Las Vegas County, the Nevada sheriff there. I think he's a straight up guy. I think he's an honest guy. Unfortunately, I believe that the FBI will eventually wrestle this investigation away from him. The first time he says something that doesn't jive with the official story, they will jerk this investigation right away from him, as they did in the JFK assassination. But for the time being, his department is still conducting their investigation. At the same time, the FBI is doing the same. But his press conferences are probably the best ones to watch. And so I've watched quite a few of them, as well as looking at more video of the actual shooting. So the Las Vegas sheriff got a couple things from his press conference. He states exactly what I did, you know, that the most important thing that they're trying to find right now is the motive. Got to find the motive. As I said, the idea that this guy just snapped, no way. The guy didn't just snap. We now know that, of course, we knew when it first happened, right after it happened, that he had been in that hotel room for at least 4 days. This was a planned event. And the planning for this event happened a long time ago. We know that in most of those weapons that they found, over 20 of those weapons were purchased in the last year, purchased in 4 different states. He's been planning this for a long time. And also, the sheriff suggested exactly what I did, that he had to have some help. He wasn't a machinist. He wasn't able to convert these weapons to automatic, or he wasn't said to be a gun enthusiast or anything like that, but he sure had an awful lot of skill and knew an awful lot of things for someone who's not a weapons enthusiast. So it can only tell me that he knew someone who was. Remember, we're talking about Las Vegas. If you want to find people who can convert semis into autos or make weapons, Las Vegas is the place to go. So yes, I agree with the sheriff that you need to find the motive, and he definitely had to have some help. And I'm not just talking about maybe help in the shooting or something like that. That's something else we'll get to at some point. But I'm talking about just procuring these weapons, getting the weapons and ammo to do that type of a job. Of course, he had to surveil the situation for a long time. Way too much planning. This was definitely not someone who just kind of went off and did this suddenly. He's been planning this for probably a year or more. It's the only conclusion you can draw. Of course, his girlfriend was interviewed today by the FBI, and she did have legal representation. Now, She basically said that she had no idea he was planning any violence and that he had sent her away on a vacation about a week ago, telling her she should go visit her family. And then, of course, he sent her the $100,000. Okay? Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't know what to think about his girlfriend. I would have to meet her personally myself and conduct the interview myself to just get a gut feeling what I think about what she's telling me, whether it's true or not. My biggest interest in the girlfriend would be to look at her travel records, look at where she has been traveling to, and who she has been associating with. I'd be a lot more interested in that type of information than anything that she might say. She could be part of the plot. Who knows? I'm not saying she is. I'm saying she very well could be. It's hard to believe she could be as close to him as she was for the past 6-7 months. In fact, even essentially living together, and her not know. He had to spend quite a bit of time and money acquiring these weapons and doing all this stuff. Unless she is just completely, oblivious to what's going on around her, she would have to notice something. I find it hard to believe, and I don't know, we haven't heard whether, very much about, other than just this statement, which was made by her lawyer, not by the police. They haven't really told us anything about what they think about her interview. This was a statement made by her attorney. But I'm sure they're very skeptical about the interview, and I think that they will probably put a lot more stock into their investigation of her recent travels, where she's been and who she's been associating with. That would probably be the thing I think that law enforcement's going to focus on the most, more so than even what she said. Get that information, then come back to her if there are any inconsistencies, and I'm sure that's exactly what they're doing. First you get the initial interview, you get them to give you information, then you do your investigation of all that, then you look for inconsistencies, and if you find them, then you come back for a second interview and you try to clear up the inconsistencies. So we'll just have to follow this as it plays itself out regarding the girlfriend of Mr. Paddock. Let's see, there's something else I did pick up on last night. There actually was a sheriff who was talking to the dispatcher as the shooting was going on, and he did say that the shooting was coming from the Mandalay. They said, we see shooting coming from the Mandalay. He didn't specifically say he saw flashes, and he didn't say exactly where, what floor, or anything like that. He just told the dispatcher, the sheriff told the dispatcher, he identified the Mandalay as the place where the shots were coming from, but he didn't get specific about flashes, what floor, what side of the building, or anything like that. It wasn't specific, just that as the shooting's going on, a sheriff did tell the dispatcher that they had identified shots coming from the Mandalay. And I would assume maybe that's because they saw the broken window, maybe they saw the shooter in the window, or maybe they did see muzzle flash. I've watched quite a few different videos. I've never seen any muzzle flash coming from the floor, but again, it could just be that we're not seeing them with the recording device that was used in the video. Paddock, as was mentioned by Maura in the comments section, something else we learned today is that Paddock, about a month before, had rented out another hotel for several days where there was a concert going on. And so it's believed that maybe he did that as a dry run, just to kind of check things out. Or maybe he was actually going to do a shooting then and froze up or didn't do it or didn't get the thumbs up or whatever. We don't know if it was a dry run or what, but we do know that he had booked another hotel several weeks earlier where there was a concert, and that he was in that hotel, which is kind of strange because he lives an hour and 15 minutes away from the casino. Maybe he would rent a hotel, I don't know. But that is, kind of strange, but it sounds like something you would do if you were going to perform a dry run. And it just goes further to add to the narrative that this was definitely not a guy who just, flipped out all of a sudden. This was absolutely calculated, planned for a very long time. I would say at least a year to procure all those weapons, ammunition, and we haven't heard anything about any local gun ranges. I'm sure they've been to all the local gun ranges to find out if this guy had showed up at any gun ranges and practiced firing and stuff like that, but we haven't heard anything about that. But I'm sure that is those gun ranges in the area are probably being canvassed by detectives as we speak. Also, it's very interesting that I learned today that those windows actually are alarmed. And if a window is broken, it's supposed to set off some sort of alarm. So you have to wonder why, when that window is completely broken out that he's alleged to have been shooting from, why didn't it set off the alarm? Or if it did, why was there no attention called to that? And why is there nobody talking about the fact that those windows actually had wired alarms in them? That if they broke, it would set off some sort of alarm. Haven't heard any questions on that, but that's a very interesting question to ask. We also are learning, again, something I suggested, that I hinted at in the previous video, that I don't believe everything we're being told. This is a real nice guy, just a general guy, an average guy, just next guy you'd see on the street, seemed to be pretty cool and everything, and he just snapped. No, he didn't just snap. That you can throw the whole theory out the window. And as I suggested, he probably was not a very nice man. Probably was a kind of an evil guy, a bad guy, and that he was simply giving this public persona that he was a very nice guy. Remember, serial killers are experts at this. Remember, John Wayne Gacy would dress up as a clown, entertain children at birthday parties. He was a fun-loving guy, always had a big smile on his face. You know, put this public persona out there that he was just this great guy. Everybody liked him until they found those 40 some odd bodies buried in his basement. This is typical of a serial type killer. They're very, especially the intelligent ones like this guy, they're very, very good at giving a public persona that's completely 180 degrees the opposite of what's actually going on inside them, which is very dark. And this was my first gut instinct from the very beginning. So it looks like I may be proven correct, because it appears now that people are now saying that he was a nasty, mean drunk. That when he got drunk, and he did like to drink quite a bit, when he got drunk, he became pretty nasty. And everyone knows someone like that. Everyone knows someone like that they're a nice person, but for some reason they get a few beers in them or a couple of drinks in them, and all of a sudden they just get very, very nasty. Everyone knows someone like that. I know several people like that. We're also learning that there was a little coffee shop that he liked to go into with his girlfriend fairly regularly, and the staff, some of the people that work there, say that on many occasions he was verbally abusive to his girlfriend and rude to the wait staff. So clearly this guy could be cranky and nasty and mean, and even publicly, verbally abused his girlfriend. It's kind of strange, though, that both his brother and his girlfriend keep trying to give this impression that he was just this great guy. But something's not adding up, is it? Of course, we keep getting more reports of people on the ground saying that they saw shooters, other shooters, shooters on the ground, hearing multiple shooters. Again, this is very, very confusing. When you're in a situation like that, there's gunfire coming from God knows where, you don't really know where. You see people pulling guns. I mean, these could have been undercover police officers, detectives, FBI, whatever, security people. They could have been looking for the shooter. I haven't heard anyone specifically say they saw someone on the ground point a gun at someone and shoot them. I haven't heard it specifically put that way, but we are hearing people talking about seeing people on the ground with guns. Well, it could be that they're detectives or private security or whatever. There's probably a ton of private security, policemen, people like that with weapons on them. It's an open carry state. Probably many people in the audience, in the crowd, had weapons. So it's really hard to make heads or tails of that. Of course, we had this very strange press conference that was given by the FBI today. The special agent of the FBI, whose name I believe was Krause, came out and made a statement, and he said, "We have leads on the Las Vegas shooting across the U.S. and around the world." He has leads across the U.S. and around the world. This is the head special agent of the FBI who's heading up this particular case. I assume he's based in Las Vegas. But that's very interesting that he would say that they have leads on this shooting across the USA and around the world. And that's very interesting because, again, it kind of suggests that there might be some other people involved, or that he was connected to something else. Of course, we know that ISIS has come out, 2 different chapters of ISIS have come out and stated that he was working for them, that he was a recent convert, and ISIS has a record of not taking credit for things they didn't do, but always taking credit for things that turns out they did do. They're pretty straight up about they take credit for some things and some things they don't. And usually if they take credit for it, it was ISIS. And they are taking credit for this. We also have Antifa, who has stated that the girlfriend had some association with them, and that it was a big that he may have been part of that. And of course, there's an Antifa video where Antifa's actually got a group picture of a bunch of the Antifa, guys with their faces covered, celebrating it. So it's all really hard to say exactly how far of a reach Antifa has. We think about them as just kind of a bunch of local yokels, that have kind of a nationalist chapter. But of course, we know that they're being funded by some pretty heavy people, Soros and the like, and the Rotten Reverend and a lot of their friends. We don't really know exactly how connected this group is, Antifa, to international terrorism, to the jihadists, but they act an awful lot like ISIS. They cover their faces, they show women in burqas, they are commies, they hate the West, they hate the U.S., obviously. They support ISIS and the jihad. There's a lot of things that they have in common, Antifa has in common with ISIS. It's unmistakable. So it is possible that there's some connection. And that may be what this FBI agent was speaking of. We also have a very interesting story that's been broken today by Laura Loomer, who's, of course, an investigative journalist. She has uncovered a letter from Jim Moran. In case you don't know who Jim Moran is, he is the CEO of MGM, who owns the Mandalay. And she has a letter that was sent to all employees of MGM and the hotels that they own. In that letter, he states that he will match dollar for dollar any contribution that his employees make to the following groups. And he has on there a list of 11 organizations, which are all anti-Trump, hardcore leftists, including Antifa, and many other left-wing radical commie-type groups. So here we have the CEO of MGM, owner of the Mandalay Hotel, offering to match dollar for dollar donations, contributions by his employees to these radical left-wing groups, including anti-Trump groups, Antifa, and others. That is a very interesting fact that needs to be followed up on by law enforcement. Certainly does. So I listened to more of the tape last night of the shooting, and I am absolutely convinced that the weapons that they show in the picture, they show 2 weapons. One's an AR-15 and one's an M4. And I'm listening to the shot burst. The shot burst lasts for 8 to 12 seconds. You're talking 80 to 100 rounds in that time period at that rate of fire. There's absolutely no way that those were conventional magazines. No way those were 30-round or 40-round clips. Now, there are 60-round clips out there, and there's even some knockoff Chinese 100-round clips, but those things are horrible. They jam like crazy. If you listen to the sound, the ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba sounds like a quality automatic, fully automatic weapon. Too many rounds being fired to be a conventional 30, 40 round mag. Now the problem is, if he was using one of those 60-round mags, no one I know likes them or uses them. I've tried to use 60-round mags. My brother-in-law had 2 of them, 2 different manufacturers. We were firing them things for a couple hours one afternoon. They jam constantly because the problem that you have with a 60-round mag is the spring tension. In order to get the spring tension to let the bullet release properly, when there's very few bullets in the magazine, 10 or less, the spring is too tight. When you have a full clip, 55, 60 rounds fully loaded, the spring wants to be too loose. It's hard to get a spring in a magazine to feed smoothly when you have the tension of 60 rounds compared to the tension of 10 rounds or less. It's a lot more. It's a lot different tension effect, and so the spring in the magazine just doesn't work. I mean, a lot of people don't even like the 40 round clips because they have a similar problem. But the 60 round clip is, I don't know anyone who's ever fired using a 60 round clip. My brother-in-law literally threw them in the garbage. We fired with him for a few hours on an afternoon, and he just tossed them in the garbage. He said, "Yeah, I knew these. Everybody told me these things are horrible. They jam like crazy." We never, neither of us were ever to go through an entire mag without it jamming at least once. But if you listen to the sound of those rounds, no way those are 30 or 40 round clips. And if you had a 60 round clip, or especially the 100 round double drum Chinese fake clips, those things are horrible. They jam like crazy. You don't hear any jamming at all. And then they show the two weapons in the pictures in the hotel room laying on the floor. M4, AR-15. And the M4 wasn't even a real M4. It was a Chinese M4, a knockoff. You know, so there's something going on here. It almost sounds to me like it was a fully auto weapon, belt-fed. Sounds like a belt-fed weapon to me. There's no jamming, and they keep talking about these the type of butt that he used to try to get the automatic action out of a semi-automatic. And again, the same thing. Talk to anybody that's ever fired with one of those. I never have personally, but I have friends who have, and they just say, "Man, those things are junk." You know, you don't get a perfectly even burst. You get interruptions. The only way, maybe if you practice many hours a day, you could get your technique down to where you could avoid those type of the bump stocks is what I'm talking about. Unless you're really good with one of those things, you're going to get interruptions. Again, listen to the sounds. No jamming, no interruptions. It sounds like a belt-fed, fully auto weapon. As far as multiple shooters, again, we have people talking about multiple shooters. I was listening to see if I could hear two different weapons firing at the same time, and I really don't hear that. But what I do hear is that there were two definitely distinguishingly different weapons. It wasn't just one. There were at least two different weapons being used. You can hear one does actually sound like an AR-15 because, you know, the AR-15's kind of got like a crack to it, kind of crack kind of thing to it. The other one has a deeper moan to it. So it's definitely two different weapons were used. Now they said he had two tripods set up in front of the window. That would make sense. But the weapons that they're trying to say he used, or the bump stock, or the possible 60 round clip or 100 round clip, that ain't adding up. So there's something is not right here about all this, and we're not going to really know unless we can actually get the ballistics report. So every single person that was shot, we need to know what kind of a round they were shot with, what weapon fired that round. They need to look at all those weapons and find out which weapons were actually firing the rounds. Look at the fragments, the bullet fragments, and try to find out which weapons those rounds came from. Something tells me we'll never really get a good look at that ballistics report. Just like we can't get a good look at the ballistics report in the Seth Rich murder. Ballistic reports tell you a great deal. They tell you a great deal. The toxicology report and the ballistics report. Two things. I'll be very interested to see if we get to see or learn about what's in the toxicology or what's in the ballistics report. But I can tell you this right now, there was at least two different weapons being used, and I can tell you right now, definitely not 30 round clip, definitely not 20 or 30 round clip, definitely I highly doubt it was a bump stock, no interruptions, everything's too smooth. Sounds to me like fully auto, quality fully auto, weapon probably belt fed. That's my conclusion. just based on the audio that I could hear. Whether or not there was multiple shooters, I don't know. But there were definitely at least 2 different weapons, both fully auto, not bump stock, and probably belt fed. I can't imagine, 20 and 30 round magazine. No way. The shot burst lasts too long for it to be a 20. I've fired a 30 round clip with an AK-47 for hours, and I can tell you can empty a 30 round clip with an AK in about 6 seconds. Empty clip. These shot bursts are going on for no way. That was probably 70, 80 rounds. Something stinks about the weapons and the type of feed system for the rounds in those weapons. No question in my mind. We need to get the ballistics report. We need to get the truth about these weapons. And if there's other shooters, that's a lot harder to pin down. But certainly there's a lot of people reporting seeing other shooters, seeing all kinds of things like that. So this is the new information that we have. And I do have some other TowerGate news I want to get to. So I may do a second video just to talk about some other news. So we may get a second TowerGate video, maybe a part 1, part 2 type video again, so I can cover some of these other things, because there's some important things we need to know that happened in addition to this. But just wanted to follow this story on the main video. So that's what we have. I'll probably do a second video to get to the other TowerGate news. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll probably be back in a little while. Thank you guys. Bye.